Your face is not aging, it's confessing. Every line, every dullness, every tired sag you blame on genetics or bad luck, most of it isn't time, it's evidence. And by the end of this video, you're going to be able to read that evidence like a detective reads a crime scene.
Wisdom of the Stoics. If you're new, you picked the right video to start with. If you're not, you already know this one's going to hurt a little. Here's the claim we're about to prove. Marcus Aurelius, a man who buried his own children and ran an empire on fire, wrote that the soul gets dyed with the color of its own thoughts. Not a metaphor, a mechanism. And the 10 habits we're about to walk through are the dye. We're starting small. We're ending with the one that's been quietly running your entire life without you noticing. 1. Shallow breathing. Small, almost nothing, until you realize most people alive right now are breathing from the top third of their lungs all day, every day, without knowing it. Put your hand on your chest right now. If it rises before your stomach does, this one's already you. It's a habit born from tension so constant it stopped registering as tension. It starves circulation. It keeps the nervous system on a low simmer that never fully shuts off, which over years shows up as skin that never quite looks rested even after a full night's sleep. Epictetus said, "Freedom starts with what's actually in our control," and breath is one of the only bodily functions you can consciously seize back from the autopilot running it. Small fix, real effect, but this isn't even close to the one doing the most damage. 2. Dehydration you've stopped noticing. Because here's what nobody tells you. Chronic, mild dehydration doesn't feel like thirst anymore once your body adapts to it. It just feels like normal. You forget what fully hydrated even feels like, the same way you forget a room smells until you leave and come back. Skin is the last organ to get water and the first to show it's missing. Fine lines look deeper than they are. Glow turns to dullness that no amount of concealer fully hides. This is discipline, not skincare. The same discipline the Stoics applied to the most boring parts of daily maintenance, precisely because boring is where most people quit first. And quitting first is exactly why the damage compounds silently for years before anyone notices. 3. Comparison, running in the background like a virus. Every scroll through a feed built to show you other people's best 5 seconds is a small transaction where you lose. Chronic comparison doesn't just wreck your mood, it carves tension around the eyes, a subtle deadness that settles into resting expression. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that it isn't events that disturb us, it's our judgments about them. Comparison is a judgment machine you left running on autopilot. But even that isn't the habit doing the deepest structural damage. That one's still coming. 4. Chronic resentment. Here's where it gets uglier. Every grudge you're still carrying is a tax you keep paying long after the transaction ended. Think about the person you're still angry at from 3 years ago, the one who wronged you, moved on, and probably doesn't think about you at all anymore. You're still paying interest on a debt they forgot they owed. Resentment keeps the body in low-grade alert indefinitely, jaw tight without you noticing, brow lowered by default, cortisol elevated for weeks after the offense that triggered it. And cortisol at sustained levels does something specific. It breaks down collagen, the exact protein holding your skin's structure together, not metaphorically, measurably. Seneca called anger a poison you drink while waiting for someone else to suffer. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing biochemistry before anyone had a word for it. The Stoic response isn't forced forgiveness. It's a colder, more useful question. Has this grudge ever once punished the person you're angry at, or only you? But before we go further, you need to know something. Resentment isn't even the most physically destructive habit on this list. Not by far. 5. Motion you think you're getting, but aren't. You can train 4 times a week and still spend 20 hours a day essentially frozen. It's the stillness between workouts that reshapes posture, restricts drainage, and leaves the face looking permanently swollen and static. The Stoics didn't have gyms. They had lives that demanded constant physical effort by default. We have to fake that demand now, deliberately, or the body assumes stillness is the plan. 6. Outsourcing your worth. This one's quieter, and it's worse. When your sense of value depends entirely on how others react to you, your face stops resting and starts performing. Watch how people's expressions change the instant a camera comes out. That shift, the micro adjustment, the readiness. For some people, that's not an occasional performance. It's their baseline, every hour of every day. A performing face carries a different kind of tension than a resting one. It's always waiting for a verdict that hasn't arrived yet, and that wait never fully ends because the verdict never fully satisfies. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed for a happy life, and that it's entirely a matter of how you think. Watch someone who has genuinely stopped needing applause. Their face is still in a way that no lighting or filter can fake, because there's nothing left to prove in the room. Now here's where the pattern breaks. Everything so far has been physical. Posture, hydration, hormones. What's coming next is where it stops being about your body and starts being about your architecture. 7. Overstimulation you've mistaken for normal life. Notifications, noise, constant micro inputs all day. Your nervous system was never built for this volume, so it stays in a permanent state of low hypervigilance. The tell is a face that never fully unclenches, not even in sleep. The Stoics called the goal ataraxia, not escaping the world, but mastering your relationship to it. Silence, chosen on purpose, is one of the only real luxuries left. 8. Ingratitude as a default setting. Not the poster on the wall kind, the kind where your mind is permanently scanning for what's missing instead of what's already there. That scanning posture etches itself into the face over years, a mouth that defaults flat, a gaze that defaults down. Epictetus said it isn't what happens to you, it's what you think about what happens to you. A daily, disciplined habit of naming what's genuinely good is Stoic training wearing a friendlier name. We're 2 away from the real one now, and it gets heavier from here, not lighter. 9. Running from solitude. Most people fill every silent moment with noise because they're afraid of what surfaces the second the noise stops. Notice how rare true silence has become. The phone comes out at every red light, every elevator ride, every pause longer than 10 seconds. But unprocessed thought doesn't vanish when you distract from it. It compounds, it waits, and it shows up eventually as tension nobody can name or locate, a low hum of unease that has no obvious source because its source was never confronted. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private meditations in exactly this kind of enforced solitude. Not for an audience, not for publication, but as daily maintenance, and it kept him steady while an empire burned around him. 15 minutes alone with your own mind, no screen, is a discipline almost nobody practices anymore, which is exactly why it works. And now the one underneath all 9 of the others, the one the Stoics ranked above everything else. 10. Living without a standard. This is the root. A person without a clear internal code for how they want to live simply drifts. And drifting has a specific visual signature, an unfocused blankness, a face on autopilot, present in the room but absent from the moment. You've seen it. Someone reaches 60 or 70 and there's still a fire behind their eyes, a sharpness that cuts through a crowded room. Someone else reaches the same age, sometimes younger, and has already begun to fade. Not from illness, not from age, but because something inside them stopped demanding anything of itself. The Stoics didn't hold themselves to demanding codes for anyone else's approval. They did it because a life measured against a real standard produces a specific kind of alertness that no procedure, no serum, no filter can replicate. Ask yourself right now, not later, what standard you're actually holding yourself to. If you can't answer in one sentence, that's your answer. Here's what just happened. 10 habits: shallow breath, dehydration, comparison, resentment, stillness, outsourced worth, overstimulation, ingratitude, avoided solitude, no standard. And every single one traces back to the same root failure: a lack of self-governance. Not 10 separate problems needing 10 separate fixes, one problem wearing 10 different masks. That was the entire Stoic project, distilled into 4 words the Stoics actually lived by. Wisdom to see it clearly, without flattering yourself about which ones apply. Justice to treat yourself as fairly as you'd treat anyone else, no more, no less. Courage to break a habit that's been quietly running your life for years, sometimes decades, without your permission. Temperance to master the small daily inputs that, compounded, become the face staring back at you tomorrow and the one staring back in 10 years. One task tonight, not 10. Pick the single habit from this list that hit hardest, the one you recognized before I even finished the sentence, the one you already started making excuses for in your head while I was describing it. Write it down. Then write one specific action for tomorrow that interrupts it. Not a life overhaul, one habit, one day. That's the exact mechanism that let Marcus Aurelius carry the heaviest crown in the ancient world without being crushed by it. Not one transformation, not one dramatic before and after, but thousands of small, private corrections stacked quietly over years until the accumulated weight became a different person entirely. If something in this shifted for you, say which habit you didn't have a name for until today in the comments. Tell us which one you've been fighting without knowing what to call it. If someone in your life is fading and doesn't know why, send them this. Sometimes the most useful thing you can do for someone you love is show them what they can't see in themselves. Subscribe if you want more of this every week, because the world has never been louder or more distracted, and it has never needed this kind of clarity more. One last line before you go. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events, and that realizing this is where actual strength starts. Your face was never the problem. The habits were, and now you know their names.